Certainly sounds like Canada-U.S. trade talks are in a holding pattern. That is after President Donald Trump raised tariffs on certain Canadian goods. Some of the country's premiers are calling for retaliation.
We have to push back in some way. I mean, we'll continue the initiatives we had here with taking the American alcohol off the shelves, looking at the procurement process. We have to push back for sure. But in what that actual pushback looks like in terms of counter tariffs and stuff, we'll let the Prime Minister and his negotiating team decide on that.
Now, there are other premiers who feel the opposite. In fact, Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe says Canada should walk back its existing retaliatory measures.
We should be starting to look at how we lower any of the counter tariffs that we have in place, or remove the counter tariffs that we have in place as we head towards a low tariff or no tariff environment with the United States of America. This has been asked for by Secretary Lutnick, is to remove any of the tariffs that Canada might have in place. And I think if we're serious about achieving a renewed and a revamped and an enhanced trade environment, or some type of a new and improved USMCA, somebody's going to have to move.
Time to bring in our panel of party insiders. Greg McEachern is a former Liberal ministerial advisor. Fred Delory is a former Conservative campaign manager. And Melanie Richet is a former communications director for the NDP. Good day to all three of you. It does feel like a bit of deja vu, right? Haven't we been here before? There's no deal. There's a deadline. Oh, Canada's getting hit, and here we go again. It does certainly seem, when you listen to Minister LeBlanc, like this is going to be a while. This is not going to be resolved in the next few days. Fred?
Yeah, it is deja vu. It's the same thing that's keep happening. And I think, obviously the government's seized by this, and we see the premiers out talking about it, and I know industry is seized by it. I think regular Canadians are less and less interested in this issue because it keeps popping up and it keeps changing and things keep evolving. And where Trump goes with this, we'll have to see. But the market hasn't moved. Interest rates haven't moved. It's not like there's a panic right now. Now, obviously, tariffs will be devastating for us, and there needs to be some kind of deal that is met here at some point. But it's just, it's like reality TV right now. Trump is just negotiating in public. He's dropping bombs here and there, but we'll see what we actually get to at the end.
If Canadians are either tired of this or understanding and willing to hold out, is there an expiry date for holding out for a better deal?
From Canadians' point of view, I think it's going to be when people really start to feel that there's an impact negatively to them. Keeping in mind that we've just gone through years and years of inflation following the pandemic. So I agree with Fred. I think Canadians are kind of at, apologies to Matthew Goodman, but I think it's alert status orange. And that we're so used to this, and we're very used to this on Friday afternoons, talking about what Trump has done. And there's a whole phrase, a whole meme around taco. Trump always chickens out. He seems to have done that with Mexico this week. So I think what the government and most of the premiers have done is to say this is going to be tough. Get ready for this. We're doing our best to make the best of this. What else can we improve? Inter-provincial trade, making deals with other countries. But what I'm looking at is, I think anything that we do against the United States, I totally disagree with Premier Moe's comments there. I totally endorse Premier Houston's there. Premier Moe represents a province that put American alcohol back on the shelf, as did Alberta. This week, two senators, Tim Kaine, and just keep in mind the political spectrum here, he was Hillary Clinton's vice presidential choice. Rand Paul from Kentucky, one of the creators of the Tea Party. You couldn't get two more disalike, but they are combined. They're on the stage at the Cato Institute, which is a libertarian think tank, and they're talking about how the retaliation that Canada has done on alcohol is really hurting the United States. And I could go on and on about things like tourism. But on that one, in March and April of this year, Canada's American, the impact of our ban was 65% reduction in Canada, and they're feeling it. And you've got these two bipartisan senators on a stage at a right-wing think tank saying to Americans, we need to wake up on this. I think no matter what we do, domestic politics and the midterms are going to do more for Canada on this than what we could ever do.
Is there a risk in hoping that the midterms will change the channel on this? Because the conventional wisdom, is It'll go like many midterms,
Yeah,
and it'll turn against the White House, but it may not.
The risk is evident in the Democratic Party right now, who just seem to be invisible.
Yep.
And also the impact on the American media. We just saw CBS, fold on two aspects, the lawsuit and firing Stephen Colbert.
I think he's hosting this program next week. No, that's not happening. Yeah.
I'll be here all week.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is the big challenge. That is a huge challenge, yes.
Melanie, we're talking about retaliation versus negotiation, and I go back to Alberta's Danielle Smith. Again, we are having some deja vu here. Where is the tolerance when you are not, as an ordinary Canadian, seeing a deal or seeing a change on the tariffs or seeing some kind of different status for Canada when we are one of the few countries that are retaliating?
Totally. I think I agree with the point of, I think folks are tired, are maybe tired of hearing what President Trump is saying and are no longer following what he's saying. So maybe are not keeping the government accountable right now to getting a deal or to getting a deal at a certain time. I do think, though, that there's a lot of folks in this country who are already impacted by the tariffs,
Absolutely.
who feel very differently, right?
Yeah, you work in an auto plant, you work in a steel plant, you may not be working there anymore.
Totally,
Yeah.
and the raising of the tariffs makes it even worse, though, right, for those folks. So I do think that there's some maybe apathy or there's some forgiveness to the government or some grace to the government for not necessarily having a deal. But I do think that doesn't last forever. I think folks, the more that they feel that pain, particularly folks in those industries that are already losing their jobs, I think people will start being a little bit more pushing the government to do more than just, what we've seen. And the thing that I like, though, today about hearing from Minister LeBlanc, we actually heard from him. We actually heard what he was saying and then pointed to what we're doing here at home to change things so that we're less reliant on the United States, which I think is a winning message for the government while things kind of lapse with the U.S. As it relates to retaliatory, not retaliatory. I don't know anybody in my universe that thinks we should be going easy on the U.S. right now. I don't think anybody is in agreement, again, in my universe, whether they vote red, orange, or blue, agree with Premier Moe or Premier Smith. I think they want us to stand strong and they want us to not just push back on Donald Trump, but also there's a little bit of protecting our sovereignty there, protecting what is ours and what we have the right to do. So I do think the way that the government has gone so far is well heard or well received from folks. So removing those retaliatory tariffs, I think, would be probably a mistake in the communication to people of what it is that we're doing to stand up for Canada and do protect those jobs.
Yeah, and it's a bit tricky because it's the path not traveled. So how do you know what would have happened in the other hypothetical circumstance? One thing we don't know, or another thing we don't know, is what the sticking point or points are. Trump has talked a lot about supply management, seems quite fixated on our dairy sector. Is there any political room for this federal government to give in even a little bit on supply management?
I highly, highly doubt it. This is a government
Like deal breaker.
Yeah, well, look at the Prime Minister's team. His most senior people, the clerk, the chief, his principal secretary, they're all from Quebec. Supply management is big across the country. It is huge in Quebec. That is also where they have got their government mostly they beat out the Bloc. They brought the Bloc down to 20-some seats. They've won the majority of seats in Quebec. So they have a reason right there politically that it's not a wise move to mess with supply management. So, and of course, there's other parts of the country too impacted by supply management. But just looking at it through the political lens, I don't see them at all moving on that.
Yeah, agreed. Bad for a lot of folks and something that we're proud of here. And also the communication of conceding, I don't think is a good approach. And of course, as you're having those deals, there's stuff that is going to be on the table. But, what
if you have to concede more on steel in order to protect supply management?
I'm really glad I'm not at that table and having to make those decisions, obviously. But I do think the way forward, at least for Canada, and again, I'm going to sound like a broken record, the more that we can show folks that we stood ground on the things that people care about, be it steel, be it supply management, and on the flip side of everything happening with the U.S., figure out those deals with the other countries, figure out those deals with Europe, remove those trade barriers here at home. I think the better the government will be able to communicate what that trade deal looks like, concessions included or not.
These numbers keep going up, and we keep reminding people that it is only on those goods that are not CUSMA compliant. And that practically means that most of what we trade, still protected, some sectors exponentially more impacted than others. But it is like this because the Americans are still to some degree following our trade deal. What if they stop doing that?
What if they stop following the...
Yeah, I mean, if the president says, I want more leverage, just ignore USMCA CUSMA.
The rules do not apply to Donald Trump. The political rules do not apply at all. Highly recommend June edition of The Atlantic, where they pursued an interview with him and he agreed, and then he started bad-mouthing them. I kind of feel like we're in a weird game of Plinko, and where the thing ends up is different from one week to the next. And so it's supply management, and then it's the digital services tax.
Fentanyl.
And fentanyl is back, and which is ridiculous. Here I am quoting a lot of right-wing think tanks in the United States, but this is where the Republican Party should be paying attention. The Manhattan Institute, it's now August, so last month in July, they had a report where fentanyl is not an issue at the northern border in the United States. And this is not I would not call the Manhattan Institute a friend of, say, the Justin Trudeau Liberal government, but it's at the Mexico border. So, but all of a sudden, yesterday there's a big statement on the White House website about fentanyl and Canada again. We know it's bunk. And so I think that the challenge with Canadians is that we know that this is garbage, and we've kind of tuned it out. But what Trump is running the risk of, I think, as well, he's tuning out potentially his own base. They're very upset about Jeffrey Epstein, and it's not going away as much as he tries to make that issue go away. And that is at the heart of his support. These aren't really Republicans. They're not party first. They're not even country first. They're Trump first, and they're getting bored and disappointed, and that's going to be problematic for the president.
As we wrap up our segment here, how long will it be until we can go back to that period where most Canadians never said the word tariff?
2028, when Trump leaves.
That's what we're looking at.
2029, January 29, when he leaves the White House.
Hopefully.
David, you can never go home.
There isn't a changing of rules or
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. Well, have a lovely weekend, a long weekend for many people in this country, including for those here in Ottawa. And we'll see. We'll see what's going to happen, because it does not seem like there's going to be an imminent conclusion to all of this, unfortunately. Thanks very much to our Political Pulse panel, Fred Delory, Melanie Richer, and Greg McEachern.